Okay, let's unpack this. When you hear ancient Egyptian magic, what immediately springs to mind?
Hmm.
Probably, a scene from a Hollywood blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
Flickering torchlight, some mysterious incantation.
Yeah, very theatrical.
Exactly. And it feels entirely separate from everyday life or religion, doesn't it?
Completely.
You're probably not picturing a detailed academic treatise dissecting its intricate mechanics, or, well, a deep dive into the surprisingly practical, sometimes really physical acts involved.
Probably not, no.
But that's precisely what we're about to explore today.
Looking forward to it.
Our mission on this deep dive is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, the real insights from a truly meticulous scholarly work, one that systematically dissects how ancient Egyptians conceived and practiced what we tend to call magic.
And it's important to stress the we part there. Our modern labels don't always map neatly onto the past.
Absolutely. And this isn't just history for history's sake. It's about gaining a profound understanding of how this incredibly complex and, frankly, enduring society made sense of their world.
How they dealt with threats.
Right. How they confronted threats, how they sought control over their environment, their destinies, even the very forces of the cosmos.
And in doing that, we're hoping to give you a genuine shortcut to becoming really well-informed on a topic that, let's face it, is often shrouded in popular misconception.
Yeah, lots of myths out there.
Definitely. You can expect some real aha moments, I think, about belief systems that might seem alien at first, but, they often hold surprising continuity, sometimes even echoing in our own modern perspectives.
So what are we covering specifically?
Well, we'll delve into how the Egyptians themselves define this powerful force. We'll look at the unexpected physical acts involved. Yes, like spitting and licking, believe it or not.
Still trying to wrap my head around that one.
Huh. Yeah, it's fascinating. Then there are the elaborate rituals they designed for control and protection, how it all connected to state power.
The political angle, too.
Oh, absolutely. And eventually how these practices navigated the clash with Roman and Christian beliefs later on.
It promises to be a truly fascinating journey, I think, into a foundational, yet often misunderstood aspect of one of the world's greatest civilizations.
Agreed.
So let's start by challenging our own modern understanding. Let's redefine what magic truly meant in ancient Egypt.
Okay, so what's really fascinating here, and something this scholarly work really hammers home, is how Egyptologists, for a very long time, tended to, lump together all sorts of activities under this single banner of magic.
What kind of activities are we talking about?
Everything, really. Consulting oracles, interpreting dreams, making calendars of lucky and unlucky days.
Okay, standard divination stuff, maybe?
Sort of, but also horoscopes, and even, surprisingly, animal worship. All just thrown into this one, frankly, quite messy category labeled magic.
That seems overly broad.
It is, and the source we're exploring today really challenges that. It argues, very convincingly, I think, that applying modern dictionary definitions, especially Western ones, with all their baggage about illicit or supernatural stuff to ancient Egypt is, problematic.
Just doesn't fit.
It often leads to a really incongruous, sometimes plain inaccurate understanding of their unique worldview. And it's not a new problem either, There's been this long-standing lack of agreement in Western thought, even back among late Roman rulers, about where divination ended and magic began.
So grappling with these definitions is kind of a historical headache in itself.
Exactly, not just us looking back.
It becomes clear then that our contemporary idea of magic, often separate, sometimes negative, it just doesn't align with how the Egyptians saw things.
Not really, no.
So if our definitions don't work, how did they conceive of this force? This brings us to the core concept, right? Heka.
Yes, Heka, the ancient Egyptian word HK3. It's incredibly rich, really nuanced. It could mean Heka, the god, a specific divine entity.
A god named magic, essentially.
Pretty much. Or it could be a title for a practitioner, a magician, or it could mean the abstract concept of magic itself, like a fundamental force in the universe.
Wow, okay. So god, title, and concept all wrapped up in one word.
Precisely, and this is where the scholarship really shines. The source emphasizes that in Egyptian thought, and I'm quoting loosely here, God and concept are so enmeshed that little distinction is made between them.
So they didn't really separate the deity from the power he embodies.
Not in the way we might. It speaks volumes about their theology. There's this powerful quote the source uses from ancient texts. It is not Pepi who says this against you, O gods. It is magic who says this against you, O gods.
So it's Heka itself speaking, not just the person invoking it.
Exactly. It shows Heka as this inherent active divine force operating on its own, not just some tool humans pick up. It was fundamental, woven into the fabric of the cosmos, baked into creation.
That's a crucial distinction, isn't it?
Yeah.
Heka wasn't separate from the divine or something you had to call from outside. It was within the cosmos, inherent, always present.
Yes, immanent is the word. So the act of doing magic was really about engaging with, or maybe channeling, that inherent divine power that was already there.
Okay, that makes sense. And in this understanding, it also helps clear up another common idea, right? The whole evil magic or black magic thing.
Absolutely. That's a very modern, often Western overlay. While ancient texts, like the coffin texts, do mention evil magic, the term is HK3-W, it's usually in the context of, say, underworld demons or hostile forces the deceased wants to avoid.
So not evil in a moral sense.
The source argues very strongly, no. HK3-W means hostile Heka, but specifically from the perspective of the individual trying to evade it. It doesn't imply black magic in some universal good versus evil moral framework like we might think.
So it's more like a force that's just dangerous to you in that moment, like a storm or a disease.
Exactly. It's an obstacle, a hostile force relative to your goal, not inherently malicious in a grand cosmic battle sort of way. The intent wasn't cosmic evil, just hostile to a specific person or outcome.
So to really get this, we have to shed our modern baggage. Magic in Egypt wasn't separate or shadowy or superstitious in the way we often frame it.
Not at all. It was, as you said, deeply interwoven with their understanding of the gods, of existence itself, an integral part of their worldview, a fundamental cosmic power.
Okay, so we've got a better handle on the what of Heka, its conceptual divine nature. Now let's get into the mechanics, the actual how. The surprising, tangible, sometimes really intimate physical ways this power was invoked, starting with the body itself.
Yes, the body as a conduit. And this is where, as you flagged earlier, it gets really interesting and maybe a bit strange to us. Let's start with spitting.
Spitting, okay. For us, that's almost universally negative, right? Unhygienic, disrespectful.
Vulgar, even. But in ancient Egypt, this simple bodily act carried immense, even divine power. You just have to look at the foundational Heliopolitan creation myth.
Remind me of that one.
The sun god Adam brings forth the first gods, Shur, air, and Tefnet, moisture, literally from his own spittle.
Right.
Ah.
Okay, so spittle isn't waste. It's creative, life-giving, divine. An emanation from the creator god.
That's the core idea. This divine origin shaped its ritual meaning. Spittle combined this inherent divine power with its obvious natural qualities, moisture, warmth. And we see specific examples in medical papyri.
Like actual medical treatments.
Yes. Imagine reciting an incantation over your finger, moistening it with spittle, and then using that finger to seal a wound.
And they believe that actually transferred something.
A healing, protective, maybe even life-giving force directly into the body. It wasn't just symbolic, it was ritual channeling of divine essence through a physical medium, a very practical application.
And you mentioned this continues, ostagically, right into the Christian era.
Yeah, the source points this out very clearly. It highlights texts connecting to Jesus' miracles, saying things like, the spittle in his mouth is healing salve.
Wow. That sounds very Egyptian.
It directly evokes earlier praise for Thoth, the god of wisdom and magic, who was also linked to healing through divine emanations. It's this incredible continuity across millennia, across religious shifts.
It shows how deep these ideas ran.
Absolutely. The source even mentions a story from Coptic hagiography, Lives of Christian Saints, about an archimandrite named Apollo. Acts involving spittle that seem repulsive to us are seen as curative.
So the opposite of our modern view of spittle is contamination.
Exactly. It starkly contrasts our visceral reaction with this deeply rooted, magical, almost miraculous curative idea that transcended specific religions. It really persisted.
But spitting wasn't just creative or healing. It had a hostile side, too.
Oh, definitely. You can see the connection to the natural world, snake venom, scorpion stings. It's a natural weapon.
A potent delivery system.
Precisely. And it wasn't just physical venom. Spitting was a powerful social insult. The source mentions texts like the instructions of Anshashanki or the tale of Sinuhe, where smitting before someone signifies profound contempt, utter disgust.
A nonverbal attack.
A deliberate defilement. And in rituals, it became an explicit magical weapon. Anti-Seth rituals, fighting the god of chaos. Texts describe actual spitting, sometimes 4 times, sometimes many times, right at images of enemies.
And against Apep too, the chaos serpent.
Yes, in rituals like those in the Papyrus Bremnerrind, Apep, the embodiment of cosmic evil, was literally spat upon, an act of magical subjugation and destruction.
So it has this incredible duality.
Profound duality, creative and destructive, purifying and defiling, healing and a weapon. It was just so versatile, so potent, used across different times, different contexts. It really shows how symbolically charged bodily fluids were not just biology, but conduits of cosmic power.
Following spitting, there's licking. Also with this dual role, cure and combat.
Exactly. We find non-funerary uses, like in Papyrus Turin 54003, an early 12th dynasty medical text with eye remedies.
What did licking do for eyes?
Well, there's this vivid ritual described. An incantation starts, "My eyes are opened by the Great One," then draws a direct parallel. "When Isis bent over at the eye, she licked it. When I bent over my eye, I licked it."
So mimicking the goddess Isis.
Precisely. And the text then states the effect. "I dispelled the blow of a god, goddess, dead man, or dead woman." It directly links licking to a powerful, protective cure, imitating the gods to gain their power, believed to be truly effective.
I can see the practical connection too, maybe with snake bites. You mentioned opening the throat.
Yes, remedies for venom often aim to prevent suffocation, to open the throat. Licking might have been part of applying an antidote, or maybe even ingesting it, a physical counter to a physical threat, using licking's perceived purifying quality.
But like spitting, it wasn't all positive.
No, it could definitely have hostile overtones. In the cannibal hymn from the Old Kingdom Pyramid text, a really intense text, the king is disgusted when he licks the emetics, which are in the red crown. Here, licking means aversion, negative contact.
Touching something harmful.
Right. And even more aggressively, in later texts, the glorifications of Osiris. The deceased is empowered, told, "Your tongue has been assembled," so that it might lick against NSBR, your enemies.
Licking against them, like an attack.
Exactly. Portrayed as a direct, aggressive act, asserting power, dominance in a very visceral way.
So again, that dual potential, health and purification or confrontation and attack,
Yeah.
which brings us to swallowing, which you said was about more than just eating.
Much more. It connects to knowledge and power in a profound way. The source points out this fascinating link in the language itself. The words for eating and knowing were deeply connected.
You mean the same word could mean both?
There's a Coptic root that combines both meanings. It shows how deep this ran. It wasn't just a metaphor. To ingest something was, in a sense, to truly internalize and know its essence.
To eat is to know. That's powerful. And it had practical uses, especially for people who couldn't read.
Yes. The tale of Setna I from the Ptolemaic era illustrates this perfectly. A revived mummy explains how written spells were made effective for the illiterate.
How did that work?
The written spell was literally dissolved in water, or maybe beer. Then you drank it.
You drank the words.
You ingested the liquid containing the dissolved words. The belief was you literally ingested the knowledge, the power of the words. So even if you couldn't read, you could know the words, embody their essence, access their magic.
That explains idioms like, "I have filled my body with Heka, I have quenched my thirst with it."
Exactly. It implies complete internal absorption, making the magic part of you.
And this wasn't just for knowledge spells. Potions, too.
Yes, magical papyri mention love filters, healing potions. Some involve what they call divinized animal parts.
Divinized, like sacred.
Yeah, imbued with power, like a drowned shrew mouse used for poison or love potions.
Or
a divinized hawk. These potent mixes were swallowed, directly incorporating the charged substance and its power into the person.
The body really was seen as this dynamic conduit, wasn't it? Through fluids, through ingestion.
Absolutely. Porous, interactive. An active participant, not just a passive container. But of course, magic went beyond the body. It extended to objects, elaborate rituals for control.
Right, let's move to those rituals. Execration rituals sound particularly potent. You mentioned the Narmer palette.
Yes, that's one of the earliest examples right back around 3100 BC. The subjugated prisoner motif, the king striking down this bound captive. A powerful visual statement of dominance from the very start.
And that image just stuck around.
It became incredibly pervasive. You see it everywhere. Early votive items, cosmetic palettes, ivory cylinders, mace heads. But also integrated into architecture. Temple walls, thrones, podiums.
Wow, built into the very structures of power.
And even on sandals, like Tutankhamun's or Roman period mummy foot cases. So the wearer literally trampled their enemies with every step. constant ritual subjugation.
That's intense. The source mentioned a modern parallel with slippers in Bangladesh.
Yeah, the 1989 Dhaka riots over slippers with characters resembling Allah. It shows that power, that provocation of symbolic trampling, it still resonates deeply across cultures. It's not just an ancient curiosity.
And importantly, these images weren't just decoration or propaganda for humans.
Crucially, no. Their main function, the theological one, was sympathetic magic. Depicting enemies as defeated was believed to ensure their defeat in reality. For the state, the king, the gods.
So the image created the reality.
In a magical sense, yes. It quickly became about ritual validity, not historical accuracy, perpetually ensuring order by ritually subjugating chaos.
And who are the targets? Just foreign enemies?
Not always. It could be foreign enemies, sure, but also specific Egyptians, political rivals, maybe, or abstract forces like disease or bad luck, even personal foes. Texts like Papyrus Bremner Rhine mention cursing enemies, whether dead or alive.
So it was flexible. State ritual could be used personally.
Very flexible.
Okay.
It blurred the lines between cosmic order and individual problems, which takes us to a specific archaeological find, Margissa.
Right, the Margissa deposit. Middle
Yeah.
Kingdom period, you said.
Yeah.
Providing concrete evidence.
Exactly. Found in a Nubian fortress context. And the contents?
Yeah.
Chillingly specific. Broken red pots, deliberately smashed. Fragments of figures, some inscribed, some not. A headless torso of a bound prisoner figure.
A blinded eye.
A model of one, yes. Remains of a mutilated cow, maybe a crocodile, broken model boats, figures of geese. A very deliberate, almost curated collection of destruction.
And these objects weren't random. They related directly to the fortress's purpose.
Directly. Sesostris III stated the goal of the Nubian forts was to prevent any Nubian from passing, downstream or overland or by boat, also any herds of Nubians.
Yeah.
The objects in the deposit, the broken boats, the bound figures, the animals, they magically target those exact threats.
Wow. So it's highly specific practical magic reinforcing state policy.
Precisely, making the abstract threat tangible and ritually destroying it.
So how were these objects actually used? What were the physical acts of destruction?
Breaking PGPT was key. Those red pots at Margissa showed impact marks, likely from a striker, maybe stone found nearby, a violent, deliberate shattering.
And breaking connects to other imagery.
Yes. The chaos serpent Apophis is he of the broken Kos, his life force shattered. Sesostris III calls Nubians wretches, broken of hands and hearts. Even the Book of the Dead has the deceased shatter green faience. It was a physical act with magical effect. Old Kingdom finds also show clay figures shattered before burial. Systematic destruction.
And binding, too. We saw the imagery, but actual binding.
Yes, the physical act was crucial. We even have finds from Socorro with carbonized traces of cords still stuck to execration figures, makes it incredibly concrete. Binding restricted the enemy's power physically, therefore magically.
And burning, incineration.
Another powerful act of annihilation, burning figures often wax. Margissa had ashes and melted red wax near sacrifices. It links to rituals against Apep or Seth, where figures are bound, netted, cut up, then burnt. Total destruction.
So breaking, binding, burning. But the final act was often burial. What's the significance there?
Burial seems to be the overriding significance. It unifies all these execration objects, broken, intact, burnt, whatever. They were typically buried in necropolis sites, cemeteries.
Placing the enemy in the realm of the dead.
Effectively neutralizing them permanently, sealing their fate, their powerlessness. A final magical imprisonment.
It reminds me of the Greek and Roman curse tablets, the Defictiones. Weren't they often buried too?
Exactly, the parallel the source draws, and often buried in older tombs, which challenges the assumption that everything in a tomb belongs to the original owner. These curses, like the Margissa objects, were often deposited later for living people, using the tomb as a potent magical spot.
Repurposing sacred space for contemporary magic. Fascinating. Okay, besides destruction, there was also encircling.
Srach, a very versatile concept, used in coronations, encirclement, defining the king's boundary, his domain.
Protection, too. Like the Ouroboros.
Right, the snake eating its tail encirclement as protection, defining sacred space. And torch rituals like saying K.T, literally protection of the bedroom, creating safe boundaries.
But it had a hostile side, too, like spitting and licking.
It did. That duality again. There's a jug mentioned in Papyrus Salt 825 with an inscription, "Go round about it," Firchar H3.F. The source interprets the jar itself as the actor, encircling its victims.
The jar does the encircling.
Yes, reinforcing that constrictive idea of binding and burial. The container becomes an active part of the curse, trapping the enemy.
An inanimate object acting magically. Incredible. The source mentioned modern folklore parallels, walking around the house.
Yeah, briefly, like the Texas idea of walking barefoot around the house in the first snow for health. Very different context, obviously, but it shares that core idea of symbolic spatial action for an effect, contrasting with Mesopotamian rites of encircling enemy images for protection. It shows how universal these ideas of boundaries and spatial influence are.
That underlying human desire for control, for safety.
Absolutely. These rituals, body acts, object destruction, spatial magic, they were incredibly detailed, woven together physical acts, symbols, theology, not haphazard at all. Which leads to the question, who did all this? Who were the magicians?
Right. Who were they in Egyptian society?
Well, the source is very clear. Typically, they were highly specialized priests, deeply embedded in the state religious structure.
With specific titles.
Yes, like chief lector priest, tri-TP, who read sacred texts and led rituals, or scribe of the House of Life, NFR, basically the keeper of sacred knowledge in temple libraries or scriptoria. These roles were often linked.
Literacy, religion, magic, all connected.
Very much so. Think of the Hartumim in the Old Testament. Joseph's interpreters of dreams likely derived from these Egyptian priestly roles. And later, in Coptic times, the lineage continues with scribes of the House of Life, a real continuity of knowledge keepers.
So access was restricted, not just anyone could learn this.
Largely limited, yes. Priests got the scrolls from temple libraries. It was elite knowledge, carefully controlled.
Any exceptions?
The source mentions the tomb builders at Deir el-Medina. These were highly skilled artisans, literate, living in a fairly isolated community. They sort of acted as their own priests, giving them unusual access.
A unique situation. But even popular spells probably came from priests originally.
Likely, yes. Perhaps simplified or adapted versions filtered down. But it wasn't a completely top-down thing either. Popular culture could influence priestly rites, too.
How so?
The source suggests, for instance, that letters to the dead, people writing to deceased relatives for help, might have influenced official execration rituals. So there was some dynamic interplay, not just priests dictating everything.
Okay, so priests were central. And this magic wasn't just private stuff. It was tied to the state.
Deeply. Execration magic, for example, was embedded in state and temple contexts. The source explicitly warns against trying to separate private magic from state magic, saying any attempt is clearly suspect. They were interdependent.
Two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. We see royal examples. Execration used against conspiracies, like the plot against Ramses III, the Berlin Red Pots cursing figures with names from the 12th dynasty royal family suggesting use in political power struggles.
So internal politics, too.
Seems likely. And papyrus shows the king actually owned execration scrolls. It was part of the royal toolkit.
And the line between public and private could blur even in state rituals.
Absolutely. Even big state rituals, like cursing Apep for cosmic order, often included a bit telling the priests to also destroy one's own personal foes alongside the enemies of the state.
Wow. So you could slip your own enemies into the official curse.
Essentially, yes. It shows how flexible and practical Heka was, serving both grand cosmic needs and individual grievances simultaneously.
Which brings us to later times. The clash with Rome and Christianity. You mentioned a Roman prefect's decree.
Yes, Q. Aemilius Saturninus in 99 AD. He explicitly banned divination via oracles, documents, cult images, calling it all charlatanry. Shows the Roman prejudice, viewing Egyptian practices as hazardous superstition, very much like our modern negative view of magic.
How did Egyptians react? Did they stop?
It led to more secrecy, more danger, but they persisted. There's the story of Thessalos, a Greek doctor seeking secret cures in Egypt after these bans. He still managed to consult a deity through an Egyptian priest. Shows their resilience, their adaptation.
Did Roman and Egyptian ideas of magic just merge then?
Not really, not until the Coptic period when Christianity became dominant in Egypt. It was Christian hostility that really changed things. They labeled all pagan practices Roman and Egyptian with the negative term magia.
So Heka lost its original meaning.
It was stripped of its deep theological significance, reduced to this narrower, negative idea closer to our witchcraft. The sacred was redefined as profane by the new religion.
A huge shift. Did the practices themselves decline?
The source argues against a qualitative decline. Many traditional elements survived because they could be adapted or still met people's needs. What we see isn't necessarily a decline in quality, but maybe a quantitative increase in evidence, more amulets, magical papyri, healing statues from later periods.
So the practice is proliferated, even if the label changed.
Seems so. The core mechanisms, the practical applications of Heka endured, even as the cultural context and the terminology shifted dramatically around them.
So those lines between religion, state, magic, incredibly fluid, constantly adapting, but the underlying power, Heka, remained potent.
Exactly. Which brings us back to the core theology.
Right, let's circle back to Heka itself. We established its role early on, more than a god, an intrinsic active force.
Yes, immanent in the cosmos, because, as they saw it, the creator god is immanent in Heka. Ray himself says in the Book of the Heavenly Cow, "Behold, Heka himself is in them the spells. As for him who ingests, knows them, thermai."
So knowing the spells using Heka is directly engaging with Re.
That's the implication. Heka is the conduit for Ray's creative and protective magic flowing down to other gods. Heka even appears as one of Ray's 14 paths, his vital powers or spiritual doubles. And other major gods, like Hathor, are called Great of Magic. It permeated everything.
And Heka as NBK3.W, Lord of Doubles. What does that title tell us?
It's key. It means Heka presides over the dissemination of consecrated images, turning the one primordial unity into countless reflected forms. The source calls this the imagistic principle.
The idea that the divine can be doubled or reflected in many forms.
Exactly. Fundamental to their theology of creation. The singular divine essence manifested in myriad forms, each holding a spark of that power.
Can you give examples?
Think of sacred animals. The Butch's bull was the literal embodied Ba of Re. The lion wasn't just a symbol of the king, it was an image, a manifestation of his power. Wild animals hunted in rituals were images of enemies, of demons. Even as the source beautifully puts it, the small scarab is great through its secret image, its link to Khepri, the rising sun.
So these weren't just symbols, but actual embodiment, doubles of divine power.
Yes, which is why the source argues so strongly against our artificial split between magic and religion. That terminology doesn't fit.
It's an artificial imposition.
Right. What we call magic were, to them, direct expressions of Orthodox theology, not sub-religious superstition. It was all one integrated system.
That's a huge takeaway.
Yeah.
Ancient Egyptian magic wasn't hidden or deviant. It was active participation in and manipulation of this divine cosmic force, Heka, that was everywhere.
Precisely. A dynamic, integrated system of power.
What an incredible journey we've taken. From, well, spitting is a sacred creative act?
Huh. Still sounds strange, doesn't it?
It does. To meticulously breaking clay figures of your enemies. Ancient Egyptian magic was so much more intricate, so deeply integrated with their religion, politics, daily life than we usually imagine.
Absolutely. Not separate, not on the fringes. It was fundamental and active part of their reality.
It wasn't some hidden superstitious thing done in the shadows.
Not at all. It was core to their understanding of the cosmos, an inherent force of creation and order, wielded by gods, kings, priests, all working to maintain order, protect the living, guide the dead. Understanding that shows how utterly integrated it was.
So what does this mean for you listening now? Maybe it prompts us to reconsider our own definitions, right? Magic, religion, the supernatural versus the natural. Are those lines really as sharp as we sometimes draw them?
Yeah, and how do our own beliefs, our rituals, even just daily routines or good luck charms, how do they reflect these deeper, maybe unconscious desires for control, protection, influence?
It makes you think. Consider our modern idea of influence, social influence, political influence, personal charisma.
Yeah.
Could there be echoes of Heka there?
It's an interesting thought. In their world, this inherent, immanent power could be harnessed for specific effects. How much of what we call persuasion or presence or charisma today?
Might they have seen as a form of magic in their interconnected worldview?
Exactly. What invisible forces, known or unknown, do we still try to harness, consciously or not, to shape our reality today? Something to ponder.